Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
For Wells.
We appreciate all the support on the recent content. We are back with a live reaction. I know we did miss our, the stream date previously, but we are here now to react, obviously, and talk about what just transpired with Team USA winning gold, inevitably, and we're going to jump right into it. But please, before we do get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, so Team USA basketball now finally done it once again.
Yep.
5th straight gold, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
So with a 98-87 win over the French national team, right? You had the old heads once again leading the way, right? You had Stephen Curry as the leading scorer with 24 points, 5 assists, a good chunk of it in the fourth quarter. He had a 9-point personal run, 9-0 personal run on his own from 3, right? When they needed it the most after France kind of got right back into the game. You had LeBron with 14 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists. Kevin Durant with 15, 4 and 4, all with big moments at different points in the fourth quarter. You also had Devin Booker chip in 15 as well, and AD with 8 off the bench, right? 8 points, 9 rebounds, 2 steals, 4 blocks. So, for the most part, it was really the starters, right, that kind of saved the day for Team USA, kind of once again, right, like what we saw against Serbia, which we'll get into since we missed that part, but obviously we're talking about this game first. So, look at the minute spread, right? Almost all of the starters, right, played, close to 30 minutes or more, right? Steph had 29, LeBron had 32, Durant had 31, Booker had 27. The only guy who didn't play a ton in the starting 5 was Embiid, right? He had 4 points, 3 rebounds in 11 minutes, right? Just, again, didn't really need him in this game, right? Because, it's a different matchup, different type of play, right? A lot of, up and down, run it up the court play from some of France's front court guys, right? Yabusele, Wemby, and others. But just kind of funny, right? Because this game was a little bit different from, the Serbian game, in which against Serbia, they were down almost the entire game, right? And they kind of had to get it all back, right? In a, furious fourth quarter flurry, right? To, run away from it at the end. But this one, they were up, the entire game. Right, other than the first quarter, right? France had an early lead in the first, but after that, Team USA, was able to kind of stabilize it, and it was really the defensive end, right? Obviously, that got it done. They did shoot very well from the floor, right? But there were a lot of possessions, right, where they were able to get stops and then get out and run. They had so many fast break points, right? I believe at one point they had 27 fast break points, so that's basically almost a third of their offense, right, came from transition plays. You can look at the stats, right? They had 10 steals, 6 blocks, right? So, there were stretches where the defense could have been better, but by and large, they did a good job, right? Obviously, Wemby went off with 26.7 rebounds, 3 of 8 from 3, right? He had been struggling from the field for a good chunk of the Olympic run, right? But it came to play in this big game, kind of like Steph, right? He had 2, in the 2 biggest games, right, he was on fire, right? Where in the earlier games he was cold, and we talked about it, where there was gonna be a game at a certain point where you needed him, and he was gonna go off as well. Because there were some people that were kind of saying, why do they keep playing Steph, right? Because he wasn't shooting well, and when he's not shooting well, then he's also maybe not playing great defense. But this is why you put him out there. But with France, not a lot of help, right? You had basically 2 guys carry most of the offense, right? Wemby and Gorshan Yabusele, who used to play for Boston. He had 20 points, 2 rebounds, including a poster on LeBron where he tried to take a charge.
Yeah, I wish we could erase that from history. Dang.
Right. But after that, not much offensive production from anyone else. You had Nando De Colo, who used to be in the NBA as well. He had 12 points, 5 for 7 from the field, so that's fine. But after that, Fournier had 8 points, was 3 for 10. You had 2 starters who didn't score at all, right? I think it was Isaiah Cornier, and then I believe Frank Ntilikina as well. Mm-hmm. And Ntilikina didn't play much at all. He only played 7 minutes and didn't really do anything on defense either, right? Which is kind of why he's not going to play. Gobert played 12 minutes, was okay, didn't really score, but did have 3 rebounds, 2 steals, and had a few possessions where because he was posted up, they kind of had to foul him, kind of like what we talked about when he was playing for Minnesota in the playoffs, right? But not a lot of help. Koulibaly had a couple of nice possessions, right? He had 6 points, and some good transition plays. But, not just, even though they had 87, 48 from the field, but they shot 30 from 3 and they also had 13 turnovers. Team USA had a stretch in the third where they just kept turning the ball over again and again and again because they finished, I think, with 17. And most of those came from LeBron had 5 and Steph had 5. And they kind of came in, bunches, right? Where I think, it was like Steph had a turnover where he stepped out of bounds, a couple of passing turnovers. LeBron had a couple as well. But again, by and large, the last several games, other than the first quarters, right, were blowouts, right? But then these last 2 games were much closer, much more competitive games, which you would expect as you're playing better quality teams as you go up. But, in the end, they got it done, right? And so now they're gold medalists once again.
Yeah, I think I loved everything that I saw from the entire the entire Team USA team, excuse me, outside of the turnovers, obviously. I think that was kind of like the only gripe that I really had coming away from this game. And, I think this is kind of what you would want to see from the team as a whole, because I think they were much better defensively in this game than they were against Serbia, which is why, they were able to kind of be ahead the entire game. It got close at certain points, but you never felt like France was going to completely overtake Team USA just because you could tell that they were so locked in defensively, switching. And then obviously offensively, being able to open up the floor with all these guys on the same, team. We're kind of just repeating ourselves from previous streams, but offensively, LeBron kind of being the point guard and quarterbacking, having, and making defenses have to choose between, leaving Devin Booker or Steph Curry wide open because somebody's going to have to be double teamed or else it's going to be way too easy. So, offensively, I love what I saw from the entire squad as well. So, and obviously Tatum played as well. I know that was kind of like a point of concern that people had. Like, was he going to play? He played. Bam played. AD, Edwards. I feel like this was just a really good team effort all around from everybody. And, I think everybody deserves their shine. Everybody contributed. But the main guy here that we should be singing praises for is for sure Steph, because he came in the clutch back-to-back games for sure. I did have one question for you to put you on the spot a little bit, but, I know there's no MVP for this, but if you were to give an MVP for this, not necessarily just this game, but the overall Olympic run, who would you kind of give it to? And maybe point out an unsung hero or something like that.
That's a tough one because, each of these guys kind of had their moments, right? Obviously, like Steph in these last 2 games, was kind of the mainly the offensive hero. And then, you have LeBron and Durant, kind of taking turns as well. So you probably have to lean, probably somewhere between LeBron or Durant. I guess you could also have Steph in there as well because of the scoring, burst as well. But I think they've also kind of done a little bit more all around play as well. So, I mean, if you wanted to do a cop out, you could have all 3, kind of just as a quote unquote old head awards.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess if you wanted to, but I don't know. I mean, again, I think in terms of all around play, you could give it to LeBron early on. It looked like AD, might have had a chance, but he hasn't played quite as consistently. But I think it's got to be, one of either LeBron or Durant, and I guess you can kind of lean towards whichever one you want, right? Obviously, Durant didn't start until this game, but he certainly played a ton, other than the earlier games. So I'd say probably one or the other. But I think with LeBron having the point guard responsibilities as well, I would probably lean a little bit more to him. But I think I can't really complain if anybody else wanted to pick, Steph or Durant, or even like an AD or somebody else, because there's a lot of guys that played well.
Yeah, for me personally, I would pick Bron. Just because, like you said, the all-around stuff, even like the defense and, the certain plays, the momentum shifters, the silencers, I think LeBron proved that he's the king of that once again on the big stage. So awesome to see from there. Did you have an unsung hero that you wanted to kind of, point out or give some shine to? Because I feel like there's a couple of them.
Devin Booker might actually be like a really good one because, to be honest, he's had a lot of really good performances, in these games. And he was kind of a guy that, initially a lot of people, I think even ourselves included, were kind of like, does he even start, for Team USA, because of the fact that, you watched, say, like the Suns and the Wolves play against one another, in the postseason. And you might have made the case, all right, well, since, the Wolves kind of trounced the Suns, well, not kind of, they did trounce the Suns in the postseason. You might have to give it to Edwards, right? But, with Booker, you can see his value, with this team because he does a lot of stuff, especially with that off-ball, movement shooter type role, right, that Edwards doesn't really do quite as much, right? He's, much more effective with the ball in his hands. And even defensively, obviously Edwards has been really good defensively as well, but Booker defensively, has gotten after it and has made a lot of big plays on that end. Even if they don't show up as, say, like steals or blocks, it's a lot of just really smart, level-headed defensive plays, right? Where it's just, a very composed player, where it's not really a lot of out-of-control stuff. It's well within the flow of everything, and you need, those type of, you could call it connector pieces. So I would probably say, unsung, because everybody's talked about, say, like guys like AD,
Yes.
And Bam,
Yes.
And others, right? So I would say Booker.
Yeah, I would say it's probably between Book and Drew, if you want me to be honest. I feel like Drew's defense and Drew, what he's been able to do on the offensive end as well, being a playmaker, a spot up shooter even. So, but yeah, for sure, Book is my number one guy that I would have as like the unsung guy, because like you said, what he's been able to do defensively, individually, even in a team setting as well. I've had no concerns because I thought he was going to be one of the guys that, teams attacked and they tried to, but he stood pat and, he stood tall and, he stepped up in big ways for sure. So overall, great defensive team, great identity. I think, that's the thing that's really cool. And what a last dance, I think, really for LeBron James and even potentially Curry as well.
Yeah. I mean, because again, you talk about the ages of these guys, right? Steph is 36. LeBron's 39 going on 40, right? Durant is 35.
Yeah,
right?
He's there too.
Those could potentially be all three of their last Olympics.
Yeah.
And possibly, especially, all three of them playing together.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting, obviously, to see, we don't want to talk too much about the next one, but, the next three guys that will be on Team USA, after those guys are gone. I'm not saying that none of them will be on the 2028 one, but, probably at least one of them isn't going to be there. And I'm sure, you'll have some other guys that'll be up there, right? Like, I know that they've already kind of said, like, yeah, Jaylen Brown is going to be in consideration. Maybe one of the next upcoming guys in the next couple of drafts, right, could be in there as well, right? You could see like a Cooper Flag.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah, and not that they're going to play a ton, but only because, like, in previous Team USAs, you would always have, like, one young guy that doesn't necessarily play.
Right.
It could be a guy that's currently in college, right, like AD in 2012. I guess if you want to go way back, you could have, what was it, I think Leitner, right, Christian Leitner on the Dream Team.
Yep.
So, there's a lot of options to go for, but, again, just cool to see all those guys play together, right? Because again, we don't normally get to see that, in meaningful games, right? Because, the All-Star game is usually the only other time we see it. And not that it's not a meaningful game, but it's just a lot different than the Olympics, right? Where there's real stakes because, you're trying to get the gold medal.
Yeah.
So,
and what KD has the most, four, and that's the most gold medals of a USA men's basketball player, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
and that's
more history for you there.
Exactly. And that's pretty difficult to do, right? Because you'd have to be able to be on, that would span basically over 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he was on this one, 2020, what was it, 2016, right?
Yeah.
And then 2012.
Yep.
So,
yeah. And,
exactly,
with like the other young guys that are possibly going to, have to replace some of these other guys, I'm looking at like a guy like Paolo even. Like, I feel like there's so many. That you could really choose
plays
from.
for the Team USA, right? Because
he played for us in the World Cup, I think.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think what is it? Puerto Rico? He could play for them. Is that what it is?
Italy.
Italy then. Italy. Yeah. Okay. Whichever one. Sorry for the disrespect, but yeah, I know that he played for Team USA, but I know he also received backlash from Italy for not suiting up. Not suiting up for them. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. But and then there was what was the other one? I think it was Embiid, right? Who mentioned he might play for Cameroonian national team, which again I could see just because of the fact that in the other than a couple of games he didn't play quite as much, right? He had a DNP CD in one of them, right? And then in this game he only played 11. Obviously the two games before that he played a decent amount. So, I could see that, right? Because that wouldn't happen if he's on, the Cameroonian team. And he could just be trolling, obviously.
Yeah.
But, either way, he's got a gold medal as well.
Yeah. So. Yeah. There's a lot, I think, of history in this run and really in this game. Steph suiting up for the Olympics for the first time and being a gold medalist for the first time and also, kind of being the guy to close it out is really, really special, I think, what he was able to do, great stuff from him. Kerr, What are our takeaways on Steve?
I mean, I guess earlier in the game there were probably some level of frustrations, but I feel like it all kind of evens out at the end, right? Just from the perspective of, yeah, there were mistakes that were made at different points, but then there were also moments that they're not going to get as much credit for, right? Again, making the decisions to bench certain guys, right? Because that's not always the easiest thing to do. Um, and also kind of like having different lineups depending on the matchup, right? Because there were going to be times where like Jason Tatum played a little bit in this game, but then there were other games where he started, right? There were other games where he didn't play at all.
Yeah.
Same for a guy like AD or same for a guy like, Embiid, right? Where different guys are starting, different guys are playing. And then in between the games, right? Like there's certain stretches where, guys aren't going to play. Like if you need a switching defense, you don't want Embiid out there, right? But if it's kind of just guys kind of like being able to kind of, go over screens and kind of just play more, traditional style man defense, right? Then he can be out there because he can just kind of stand around the basket and kind of get ready to, protect the rim. So, yeah, like I said, I think it all kind of evens out, at the end of the day. I know that there were also like offensively maybe some issues that people had because it's like, it's kind of hard to run some of the Warriors type offense when you don't really have, your typical, other than Steph, right, the typical Warriors personnel. But then you could kind of see where some of it was boosted, right? Because, like, say, you're not running, the off-screen stuff for, an older Clay that's not quite as good as he used to be, right? You're running it for Booker. Or, in the case of LeBron, he's running the Draymond role. And obviously he's, at this point, and that's been pretty much his whole career, right? A better player, than Draymond Green. So that's where I think I could understand, some of the, issues that some people have had at different points. But like I said, I think, with the coaching and the talent, it all evens out at the end. Let's see. OMG, Steph is him. Oh my goodness, we're getting a lot of
France K
comments
is
in the live chat
crazy.
from Trent. Steph is him. All I want to hear about is Steph. That's all I want to hear. We don't care about what happened. Just talk about Steph. Simple. LBJ. Steph are unstoppable. Pick and pop is too easy. France K. I mean, yeah, a lot of,
Bro,
again, we talked about it, right? Those were the plays at different points, right, that got Steph going earlier, right, where they had the LeBron and Steph, pick and pops, pick and roll possessions like that, right? And then obviously in the fourth, right, later in the game, because France made the lineup change where they put the bigger defenders, right? You had like Batum, and guys like Yabusele kind of switched on to Steph. But then he was like, well, I can take these guys one-on-one in ISO because I have a quickness advantage. I can create the separation. And then also I can just make tough shots. So, that's kind of the value of obviously having a guy like that. And we talked about it because, again, I know that there were people that said, why was he playing in some of these other games when he wasn't hitting shots? But we said, and I said many times, there was going to be a game, there were going to be moments where you needed Steph to have a big game. He's just too valuable he's just too valuable and too good to just not play at all.
Yeah.
Tatum, please never come back.
Bro, what?
What are your thoughts on the Tatum thing, on the Tatum experience? Because, we talked about it where there were moments where it kind of felt like you could have used him in some of these other games, but they didn't really go with him a ton, right? He started in some of the exhibition games, but, all in all, you kind of do wonder where it was a little bit surprising, I guess, probably to some that he didn't play probably as much as you would have thought, right? Because, again, he was the best player on, the title-winning team. Again, didn't really matter at the end of the day, but just kind of an interesting experience.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with Tatum, his role, I feel like, is different than what it is in the NBA. Like in the NBA, he's asked to do a lot of scoring, a lot of playmaking even. But for Team USA, he was primarily a phenomenal defender and also a great rebounder. And I think he did that. And I think that's why he was brought in. But in terms of why he didn't play, I don't know. Like in Serbia, in the Serbian games, I would have thought you would have put him out there because that's where you kind of had a little bit of a disadvantage at one point in the game. But I get it. They probably just didn't want to shake the rotation that they had going on or whatever. But
should have played, but still congratulations to him winning gold in a ring.
Yeah,
and also,
that is a feat. Again, that is a feat.
Yeah. And again, you also, kind of have to think about it from the perspective of he never complained. Right, obviously, he never said, and not that he should, but you know what I mean. Like, he could have easily, like, in his mind, be like, "Hey, I was, the best player on a team that just won a title. Where's my minutes?"
Yeah,
but
he's humble though.
He never, and in the minutes he played, right, there wasn't really like a lot of monopolization. It wasn't like a scenario where it's like, "Oh man, it's so good to be out here. I got to get some of these, crazy shots up." But no, like you said, he was playing his role, rebounding, defending. So everybody pretty much played the role to a T. There were some stretches where you didn't really need as much from some of those guys. Like there
Sure.
were some games where you didn't really need Edwards' scoring.
But you needed
And
his defense.
playmaking, yeah, but you needed him on defense. You needed his athleticism.
Yeah.
And again, like even a guy like a Derek White, right, where he played in a lot of the previous games, didn't play at all in this game,
Yeah.
right? Complete, DNP CD. So, again, that's where I think you still give credit to the coaching staff for Team USA for kind of, eventually, and because, obviously, like you have a lot of talent to work with, but you still have to, find ways to get guys to develop chemistry, which guys work better with others, right? Which guys don't work well with others, which guys just are better matchups in certain moments. So, there's a level, of strategy to that. But at the same time, like, these players were good enough, like on their own, that even if you had like a mediocre coach, it still really shouldn't, affect the final outcome. Like you still should be able to get gold. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Why was Tyrese there? Be for real. I think Tyrese Halliburton was a good addition to the team. You just didn't need him. I feel like going past that point, like even like a Derek White, like you just didn't need both of those guys.
Right.
When it comes down to it, obviously, like it's nice to have them on the team, but like you probably just didn't need it. And that goes for whoever would have been in the place of Tyrese Halliburton, if you want me to be honest. Like if it's maybe like Jaylen Brown, okay, probably he gets like more minutes than Tyrese Halliburton, but do you really need that? You already have so much of what Jaylen Brown can do. Kyrie Irving, I feel like he just doesn't really fit Team USA. Brunson as well. Like I feel like they're a little bit too ball dominant, and even Tyrese Halliburton is ball dominant too. But in the minutes that he did play, you kind of saw him being a spot up guy, ball hawk, I guess. Once again, the OGs led the way to gold. Exactly. Steph and LeBron. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It's really a dream come true. I feel like for all basketball fans, like to see these guys team up outside of, the All-Star game.
Right. Yeah, because, once the regular season starts, right, those guys, be prepared, right? If you're a Laker or Warriors fan, be prepared to probably have to kind of hide in the trenches because, unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to look like what it looks like for, Team USA right now.
No shot.
But either way, yeah. But with Tyrese Halliburton, it's kind of what we talked about, where sometimes you need a guy, that is a young. Well, I mean, he's not like a super young guy, but he is. Right. So like you need those type of guys that's okay with, hey, I'm not going to get minutes and that's all right. Right. It's mainly about the experience of being around those older players. You can pick their brains, pick whatever routines that you want to, or need to be able to grab from them. So that's kind of the important part is like, now Halliburton can go back to Indiana, right, and take whatever he learned, even if he didn't play, whatever he learned, and he can kind of bring that to the Pacers, and that can help out. No gold without LBJ, Katie, Steph. Who's on the 2028 team is interesting. Booker was awesome. He needs to be back.
Yeah, he will be.
We kind of talked about that, earlier, where it's probably going to be, I'm sure they're probably going to put Jaylen Brown back in there. I'm going to guess there's probably going to be a lottery guy, right? That's probably going to be, on the team, right, within the next few years, right? Like one of the guys in the next upcoming drafts. And then probably one other guy that's, already still really good, right? But 4 years from now, they'll be like a top, 15 guy, like you said, maybe a Paolo or, somebody else like that. Or, even like in the future, maybe like a Brunson or somebody. Again, it just kind of depends, because certain guys don't fit quite as well for Olympic basketball.
Yeah.
But, again, once those guys are on the way out, right, that's 3 open spots. Tell Joel to go back home.
Agreed. No, agreed. Like, not like literally, but like, I agree with the principle where it's like, he didn't really need to be here, if you want me to be real.
He did have the 2 big games, I guess, against Serbia and Brazil.
He did, but I don't care. I think AD and Bam are just better suited in terms of Olympic basketball. And I'm already a Joel hater. Everybody knows that. So, like, yeah, of course I'm not going to agree with that.
You're right. And they are, because, I mean, again, like with Embiid, if he's not going to have, like big scoring games, then he's probably not having a great game. Right. Like, whereas with a Bam or an AD, they could have these stat lines, right? Where like AD had 8 points. Now, again, because of the personnel, you don't need him to score, 20 whatever points like he would for LA. But, there's so many other things he can do, especially on the defensive end, and again, even like with offensive rebounds and stuff like that, right? Because that's where pretty much almost all his buckets came from, right? Like, dump offs, cleanups. They're not really running a ton of, AD offense in the post, right? In some of the Bam games, right, you kind of gave him the ball and kind of let him kind of go one-on-one on guys. But then there were also like, spot up corner threes, right? Putbacks for him, rolls to the basket and things like that. So I think like you and I have said many times, they're just better suited for, this type of basketball, right? Like
Yeah,
they're
they
just
can guard
not
one
that
through
Embiid
five.
isn't. Yeah, it's not that Embiid is not a team player or something like that. It's just, in this context, just the things that those guys do, you need more of that in this type of environment than what Embiid does. Because you already have a bunch of other guys who can get you offense, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have Steph, you have Durant, you have LeBron. And when those guys are gone and the other guys pop in, like you'll have Booker, you'll have, probably Tatum. You'll have other guys, Edwards, right, that can get you some offense. So you'll need from some of your bigs, some of that other offense. He said, "Bro, let me hop on."
I mean, yeah,
What do you
you
think?
can. I mean, you can join.
Yeah, if you want to join, you can. Obviously, you just make sure, that you got to say what you got to say. But yeah, feel free to hop on. Joel does not fit Team USA, and that's kind of what we talked about. As long as he was productive in his minutes, not really a big deal. But I guess the first question is, do we expect him to be back for Team USA in 2028? Because I know he mentioned like, yeah, I could play for Cameroon. You never know with him because sometimes he's a funny guy. But do you think he comes back for Team USA in 28, or do you think he plays elsewhere?
It depends. I feel like it depends on number one what the NBA looks like in 2028. But honestly, if you want me to be real, probably not. This was his debut. It was sketchy. I feel like at best, like where it's like half the time he didn't look very good at all, didn't look healthy. That's another thing as well. You do have to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt with that. But eventually he did show up with the two big games, like you said. So I could see him be there, but also what was the main reason he came here? It's probably because of LeBron recruiting and stuff like that. So is there going to be a big time recruiter for 2028? Probably not. So I don't really see why he would have an incentive unless he has something to really prove. And if he really cares.
Right, yeah. Yeah, like Captain America with the recruit.
Yeah.
All right, so he's in, so we'll bring him in and, we'll let him, kind of pop off.
Yo,
what up? What up? Yo,
What's
listen. I'm at work right now, and that didn't stop me watching the fucking game, dog. I go on break, and Steph, mother effing Curry. And mind you, I'm not a Steph fan, but he just made me a fan tonight. I ain't gonna lie. He made me a fan. Because that game was way too close with 2 minutes left. Way too close with 2 minutes left. And it was getting a little scary. It was like 2-something, 89-95 or something like that. And Curry just sent them boys home, man.
Yeah.
Sent them home.
What was it, 3 threes in a row?
Yo.
Yeah. 9-0 personal run.
Yeah.
Yeah, now facts. But what I will say, though, is, right, Curry doesn't need to do nothing no more. He said he just wants to win a medal. I think he still try to stay competitive with Golden State, but Golden State's just going to be mid for a while. So is the Lakers, unfortunately, right? Yeah. But yeah. So like those two teams, they're having their funnest right now because they know they're about to be playing with Buddy Hield and shit. Like that's who they're about to be playing with. They're not about to be playing with like KD and Joel. They're playing with Buddy Hield and Brandon P. Now, mind you, Brandon P is alright, but it's a difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm excited. It makes me excited more for the season because I got a new team to root for this year. I'm sure you guys know.
Yeah,
I just bought his jersey. I pre-ordered it. It was
what
like
number is he wearing?
4.
4.
I hate it.
Yeah, that's
hate it.
That doesn't look good on
You should
Westbrook.
know though, because that's what he was rocking with Wizards.
Yeah. I don't miss those times, bro. Oh my god.
Well, yo, listen. Be honest with me. What is Denver doing this year? I know this is Team USA time, but I'm curious. I didn't really get to talk to you about them.
I could see them going Western Conference Finals. I don't know if they have it in them to go to the finals again. I feel like losing KCP was a little bit too much in terms of what they do with their system. Because who's going to replace him? I get Russ is very different from KCP. You'd probably be looking at Christian Brown, Peyton Watson. Neither of those guys can shoot at the clip that KCP could.
Yeah, and then you got to factor in the rest of the Western Conference. The teams that were kind of around that tier also kind of improved as well. And it doesn't feel like Denver's kind of improved enough. Like you said, maybe if Jokic pops off, and you got to worry about Jamal Murray too, right? Because he still needs to be healthy and productive. So
he was horrible
like you
in
said,
the Olympics.
Like they could still have a chance because because of the guys they have at the top, but it feels, like, this is probably the lowest that people probably are going to feel about Denver right now, because it just feels like they haven't really improved relative to the rest of the West, and so that's just kind of the tough part. They have the health factor, for Jokic, because he doesn't miss time, which is good. So that's probably why they're still going to win 50 whatever games and be a top 4 seed.
Easily.
But, it's just going to be tough because the top teams are really good.
Yeah.
You know what I hate? You know what I really hate? Because this is going to be Russ's fault, according to NBA media. So Jamal Murray fell off a cliff. That dude fell off a cliff. I don't know what he was doing in the Olympics. I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe it was just a different style of play, and that happens, right? But even in the playoffs against the Lakers, he was pretty bad. And just the playoffs in general, I don't think he played his greatest. So this upcoming season, right, I think Jamal Murray regresses a little bit, and Denver is going to regress a little bit. But you know how the media is going to portray, it's because Russ got there and they got worse. But there's so many bunch of circumstances around that team that they're relying on Peyton Watson and Christian Brown. I mean, they're okay, but you can't go out there and expect them to perform, like you said, like KCP, or just perform like big moments. I'm not relying on Peyton Watson to hit a 3.
They're not battle tested,
and they don't have a backup big. It's just it's a mess.
Yeah, like
you're relying on Jokic so much, bro.
If Murray doesn't play up to the level he did the title year, then they probably don't really have much of a chance at all, because that's kind of what was able to get them there in the first place, was those two guys playing at all NBA level. But if Murray's just kind of closer to just not even necessarily being bad, but if it's just like, he's just not that great, anything similar to this year or similar, then I don't really know if they have much of a chance at all, which is kind of wild to say. It's just, again, you've lost too many key role players. Like, you lost Bruce Brown, you lost KCP, and you haven't really replaced them with anybody of similar ilk, and you're just kind of hoping that those guys are good enough. But what if they're not? Because they're young players, so there's a chance that they just may not be good enough. And if they're not, then I don't really know what else you can do.
I will say, though, right, Russ does have the cutting ability, and just playing with the best center in the league, that makes me excited, because Jokic finds anybody. I mean, the dude was if Serbia beat Team USA, I think they win gold. I think that team was amazing, to be honest with you. That's my opinion. I think they beat France. But Serbia, Jokic made anybody look good on that team, because Team USA is throwing 2 people at him, and, he's just known as a good passer. And he's getting open looks for his teammates and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see how that – I think Russ and Gordon, I don't think you can put them together on the court, because they're both like slashers in a sense like that. But I think you need to have Russ, you need to have Jokic, and maybe a Michael Porter Jr. out there, just to have a little bit more shooting. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. But my last thing is, before I got to go, since Team USA is done with, man, and I think I asked Yarby this, but what y'all, next play, content wise, what y'all trying to, what you're doing?
Yeah. I
know
pretty
it's kind of rough right now.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much at this point so far, we've been doing just kind of off season where we've been grading each team's individual off season. We've usually been doing 1 team per episode. We had one, I think, where we did 2. But that's kind of what we've been doing right now to kind of keep the content alive. Because like you said, it is kind of tough, after Team USA at this point. This is the kind of the dead zone in the NBA. If it wasn't for the Olympics, we would have already kind of been in the dead zone. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. And, obviously maybe something else happens, like some weird trade, but I'm not expecting it at this point. So that's pretty much what we're looking at.
Yeah, we've been going division by division. So those off-season breakdowns and grades are up if anybody wants to check those out.
Okay, that's smooth. LeBron just won MVP, by the way, too. How you feel about that?
Oh, there is an MVP?
Yeah, he just won it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yes.
I mean, that makes sense, bro. I mean, we both pointed him out.
Yeah, that's what we both said.
That deserved. I don't think you could give it to Steph just because his entire play wasn't amazing. The last 2 games were crazy, though.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be honest with you. Steph struggled the Olympics, but he stepped up where he needed. But LeBron was consistent throughout.
Yep.
And he was just the ball handler. If he had to, he guard Jokic. If he had to, he guard Wemby. LeBron did everything. And I think over the years, it makes me actually appreciate LeBron, because I don't know if you guys know, I'm a Russ fan, of course, so it was always KD versus LeBron back in the day. And I'll always say, KD better. And I'm like, that's the younger me speaking. But when you really grow up and realize he's the greatest, I mean, he does everything on the court for you. He makes it simple. Steph was going off because of LeBron. LeBron would bring up the ball, they would get the switch and he would get open. Like
Yeah.
it's really just simple as that. So it's amazing, man. But yeah, I have a good stream, man. I think we gotta drop some videos, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I feel like we haven't made some videos in a minute.
Yeah, we can make one. I'm down with it. All right.
We should. I should actually hop on as like a guest to do the off season thing. I don't mind that. I like that.
Which one do you want to do? You could probably do like the Heat.
It don't matter. Nah, hold on. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm tired of talking about Miami right now.
What about Denver? We can hit you up when we get to Denver.
Yeah. I'll do Denver. I'll do Denver for sure. Yeah.
We'll hit you up when we get to Denver. It should be like within
Denver
a month
will be a little
or so.
while, but when we do it, we'll let you know.
All right, cool. All right, guys, have a good one.
All right, appreciate it. This guy, I can't read that username. I can't tell if that's Hebrew or not, but he said, come to a European basketball game once. I guarantee you crazy passion from the crowd. The whole game singing loudly. Maybe they even, throw smoke flares and firecrackers. The environments are crazy, bro.
Right, yeah.
Couldn't even hear the whistle, actually.
Yeah, because you're right. That was something that we hadn't talked about yet. Where, shout out to the crowd for bringing the heat, right? For bringing, like you said, everything in this game. Because obviously, like you said, and what we talked about going into this live stream on our previous episode, where with France, right, they're in the gold game and they have a chance to win gold in front of their home crowd. So obviously, you knew the crowd was going to bring it. Obviously, there'd be a lot of Team USA fans as well. So obviously, there were certain points where it looked like France was out of it, but then every time they would make a run and kind of get back in it, right, then the crowd kind of went nuts and was super excited. So that was a great environment to see. And I'm sure because, people have talked about a lot of these overseas games where the environment, is really great, especially the crowd, because we don't normally get to see that, right? Because obviously, over here, right, the games that we tend to see are the NBA games because that's what's on. But I have seen at different points a handful of EuroLeague games, and the environments there are always really good to see. Even like when you look at the huddles, right, where you see the coach kind of huddle around, right, and kind of just doing some of the old school stuff, right, where they're kind of trying to get into the players and call them out and hype them up or whatever, right. So it's a good environment.
Yeah, I've seen like some crazy TikToks like where they have these drone POV videos where like they're flying around the arena, but like they're singing. Like it's not just like singing along to like the PA announcer at like an NBA game. And NBA games are loud, but no, it's like they're like soccer chants almost, and I feel like that's what it is. It's like that European lifestyle and the soccer chants kind of just combining, and I feel like it's just a great experience because like. And I feel like once you do travel to Europe, you can understand that. And like, you could definitely see it. The passion is there for sure.
Right.
And, that really is what it comes down to. Cause I feel like, these European teams, they're no scrubs, bro. They're some of the best players in the world too.
Yeah. And shout out to that commenter. Cause I don't think I've seen, I don't think I've seen that username before here.
Yeah.
So,
sorry. Can't just pronounce that name, but the comment is welcome.
Yeah, but if you're a new, viewer, in the stream, subscribe, like,
yes,
and everything else, help our channel grow so we can keep doing this.
Yes, please.
So, obviously we didn't do a live stream, about the Serbian game, right? We don't have to talk about that a ton, because this is kind of the main one. But that was also obviously a crazy game too. And that one obviously was even more intense considering Team USA was down almost the entire game, as opposed to this one where they were up for the vast majority of the game. But that's funny. I didn't remember that they did a FIBA Olympic MVP.
I swear that's the first time they ever did it.
No, they've probably done it before.
You think so?
We just may not have. I feel like it.
This is why we have Google.
Because I feel like they wouldn't just add something in there, just kind of just randomly. That's got to have been in there before. It just may not have really been thought about as much, maybe, if I had to guess, right?
Yeah, in the past, the United States basketball team would easily defeat the rest of the world. Do you think the differences in level of play have narrowed mainly in the European teams? Absolutely. You look at, the European teams that have competed, and not even just European teams, the teams around the entire globe that competed in the Olympics, they're amazing. Like look at South Sudan, fairly new country. I mean, they put themselves on the map, throughout the exhibition, USA Showcase, and obviously the Olympics as well. They've got some serious hype behind them. France,
Brazil, Puerto Rico.
Yeah. But look at France, France, they put up a fight against Team USA. Wemby balled out,
Yeah. And I think, and that's what it is. Because it's like, it's not that American basketball has gotten worse. It's really more so just that the rest of the world has gotten a lot better. Because again, people have mentioned this, right? You look around at a lot of these other teams, and how many of these teams, have NBA players of their own on a lot of these teams, right? Even like you mentioned, the South Sudanese basketball team, right, had a handful of guys that worst case scenario have been in the NBA at different points. Some guys that had been in the league right as recently as like a year or so ago, right?
Yeah.
Like a Wenyen Gabriel, and others. And then, you look at some of the other teams, right? Canada, which is like a big loser of this tournament, considering how much talent they have. Look at how many NBA players they had on their squad,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you had, right, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, you had Lou Dort, right? Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Jamal Murray, RJ Barrett. I mean, that's basically literally almost their entire team, right, consisted of NBA players, right? Which isn't the case for all these other ones. Like France has NBA players, but it's not the entire roster. So that's kind of, I think, more so what it is I think in the past they easily defeated the rest of the world. So I think that's kind of more so what it is, right? It's just
Yeah.
that the rest of the world has gotten better. Team USA is still the best, right, in terms of the collective overall talent, but the rest of the world, is getting better as well. And that's kind of what you want, because that's how you get the best basketball pretty much everywhere, right? It's,
Yeah.
it's better for everybody when everyone is really good, but Team USA is still the best.
Which I think is kind of why, and further proves why we think that this team, top to bottom talent wise, might be better than the Dream Team, considering also the competition that they're facing, is through the roof. You have some great, phenomenal NBA players and some young guys as well. After a quick Google search, so I don't know what's going on with the Olympic men's basketball MVP winners, but 2004 was the first time it was awarded. Ginobili got it. 2008,
Yeah.
2012, 2016, not awarded at all. 2021 comes out of nowhere. KD gets it. 2024, LeBron gets it.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure Ginobili, that was the Argentinian team, right, that won it all in 2004 when the
Yes.
USA got bronze. That's interesting. So I guess that's why we hadn't really noticed it, because I guess you had a long stretch where they didn't have it at all.
It's weird.
It's kind of surprising.
The Serbian team and the world champion Germany are also very strong teams. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. They are amazing. I think we had Germany kind of being the team to play for second, but France, they had a great defensive stand against Germany in their game. So and then obviously we just saw what Serbia was able to do to the United States, had them on the ropes the entire game.
Exactly, because we thought, like you said, we thought Germany was going to go further than they ended up, because France didn't play well in the earlier games, but then they ended up looking better and better. They made adjustments as well, right? Because Gobert was a guy that played a lot, and he stopped playing as much during the latter stages of play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and their offense unironically opened up a little bit more. Not the greatest, but and then you also kind of see Wemby be able to roam a little bit, and I think he wasn't too amazing defensively in this game, I thought.
And it's just kind of hard because there's a lot more big physical bodies,
right?
Even guys that aren't playing the five, right? Like say like a LeBron, that's a big physical guy that you have to try to contend with. Even a guy like AD who's not as tall as well, that's a big physical guy that you have to deal with. Embiid didn't play as much, but that's another big physical guy. And then you have other guys, right, who aren't as big, but they're still like long, kind of cagey athletic guys. Like say like Tatum isn't like a super muscular guy, but again, he's got length, he's got athleticism.
He was guarding the five at one. He was guarding a lot of Gobert, and it's funny when Wemby was posting up. I think it was Bam. I think the commentator made the funniest remark. He's like, posting him up, can't move him, and he's like fades over him. I was like, all right, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of the part of his game where obviously he would need to expand as well, right? He would need to get stronger, and things like that. But again, he's also 20, so. Again, shout out to him for having a great title game, obviously, right? He still gets silver. And that kind of makes up for, some of the previous outings where he wasn't as good. There is a player of the French national team and the Real Madrid team. Yeah, that's Gorshon Yabusele. He had a crazy tournament. I don't understand how NBA teams didn't pay attention. Yeah, he was in the NBA at one point. He was on Boston. He played for their summer league teams. He was on their regular season teams for a little bit and just kind of fell off the map. I don't necessarily know how much the NBA teams tend to look at these tournaments, right? And kind of, factor in like, oh, if they're doing it for this, then, maybe that means that they'll be able to do something for us. I'm not sure. And then obviously his role, right, on a team like Real Madrid, he's going to play a lot more, right? Because, for that team, he can start, he can be kind of one of the lead guys. Whereas in the NBA, right, I guess the money is probably, a little bit better. Even though he'd be making, I guess, a minimum, but then, he wouldn't be playing as much, right? Obviously, then there's the danger of, if something happens and somebody needs to open up a roster spot, you could get cut. I think I remember the only time I can really remember maybe something like that being kind of a swing factor, I think it was Schroeder, and he was on that, one of those national teams, right? He was on Germany. I think it was a couple of years ago, right? And he played really well because there was a stretch where it looked like, is this guy even gonna, get a contract by anybody?
Mm-hmm.
And then he ended up, signing with the Lakers, but it was still for a minimum,
Right.
right? And then only after playing well for the Lakers was he able to turn that into, a bigger deal. So, but yeah, that was the guy that was, because Wemby hadn't played as well offensively in a lot of these games, and he was the guy, Yabusele, that kind of carried the French national team's offense for most of it, right? He tended to be one of their leading scorers, and again, he's a tough cover for a lot of teams because, he's a good athlete, but also like a big physical guy for his position, right? What was he listed as? 6'8", 270, and that was kind of one of the reasons why when he was first drafted by the Celtics that there were some people that kind of liked, some of his skill sets because he's got some ball skills. He's got, a lot of versatile tools at his disposal. But, unfortunately at the time in the NBA, right, it just didn't necessarily work out.
Yeah.
But now that he's later in his career, right, and he was a lot heavier, I think, when he was in Boston, right? Like, now he looks a lot more cut. But before he looked a little bit, he looked a little bit more out of shape. But, and that's kind of just comes with, maturing and growing and things like that. So, maybe he could get an NBA roster spot, but not a lot of teams have a ton of open roster spots at this point. So that's going to be, the tough part for him. And again, it also is going to come down to, a combination of what the league can do for him and what he wants. Because, if there's no open roster spots and he can't go anywhere, then he's going to probably have to play overseas and continue to play there. But again, it's not a bad gig because, he'll still be one of the star guys, for that team. And he'll still make more than, like the average, Real Madrid guy, that's probably like towards the bottom of the roster. I don't know the salaries that they always make. Obviously it's not NBA money for everybody, but, again, it depends. Because say like for a minimum in the NBA, it's like what, $3 million, right? But it, usually you get a 1-year minimum contract. But say overseas, maybe they might get like a 2-year, or 3-year, $3-4 million deal or something like that for maybe the best guys. I'd have to go back and check. So, the money may not be a lot, but it's also more it's more security because it's more years.
Yeah. I think it's pretty awesome that he was getting MVP chance in his home country.
Yeah.
That in itself is awesome.
Environment we talked about.
Exactly. And then also, his highlight for the Olympics is for sure dunking on LeBron. And almost doing it again. He almost did it twice.
He's going to have that in his room forever.
Yeah. So, amazing,
Might be his own wallpaper.
Yeah. Amazing, performance from him. And I think that kind of brings up like the question of like, technically, what is the biggest stage in the world, right? Would it be the Olympics or is it the NBA finals? Is it the NBA in general? Like what really is the biggest stage in the world considering, the cumulative talent around the world? Because I feel like there's so many hidden gems, guys that haven't really even been given a fair shake, that aren't in the NBA around the world, undiscovered even,
Exactly. Yeah, and funny enough, we had, an NBA player, right, KJ McDaniels, on here, a while back. And he talked about, right, like, a lot of these guys overseas, right, even though people look at them as like, they're not in the NBA, but like these guys are really good. And you never know where sometimes these guys can kind of come from overseas and then they end up, coming to the NBA and balling out or going wherever they go to and they ball out. But I still feel like the NBA is still probably the biggest stage just because of the fact that it's also the most talented league. And I think that's kind of where you have to factor, some of that stuff in, right? Obviously there's not an NBA team that has the collective Team USA talent, right? But like even the worst NBA teams, right, still have some really good players, right? Like say with the Pistons, we know they're going to be horrible. But, like Cade Cunningham, right? That's a really good player, right? Or say for the Charlotte Hornets, right? LaMelo Ball, that's a really good player. For the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young, that's a really good player. So, not that those guys are always going to be on the biggest stages, but that's what I would say. Now, obviously we've had previous NBA finals where it's not always the two best teams, right? Because of the East-West right, set up as opposed to, the 16 best teams. But that's what I would say for me. But, at the same time, there is something to, a stage like the Olympics is a huge stage as well, right? Because, it's global, right? Not that the NBA isn't, obviously, but, you're playing usually somewhere else, right? Because we haven't had a ton of Olympics in the U.S., right? So usually it's somewhere else.
Yeah. It looks like
You had
most
the
popular and watched sport in the world.
Yeah, I
Do you
have a
think MLS has become more popular in the United States in the recent years?
I feel like, the thing with soccer is I
Hmm.
feel like it hasn't in the US grown quite as much as some people
Hmm.
I think were hoping for it to be. And it's not that it's not. It's just like you still have football, right? You still have basketball, right? Baseball is kind of, I guess, fallen. For sure. And like I said, I know soccer is more popular than it was, in the US like maybe 20 years ago, but um I mean, like, I don't know. I guess, like I said, I think it is more popular, but I just don't know if it's grown quite as much as some people like. Because it's just from what I've heard from some other people who cover the sports, right? It just seems like even though there are younger people that are interested in soccer, right? It's still basketball, it's still football. But I think there could be a way to get soccer to grow, even more. Because I'm sure, like, say like from a safety perspective, right? Football versus soccer, right? Football is still kind of a very physical sport. And, some of the guys that play certain positions, they may be better off, right, going into soccer to play. Especially if you can go global, right? You can get a lot of money.
Yeah, I think the issue with soccer, I feel like, is number one, frankly, if everybody knows a little something about soccer, and I think there's two things that everybody knows. Obviously, you can only use your feet, and the US sucks at soccer.
Yeah.
And globally, men's, women's, I feel like is a little different. I think the women's they just won gold, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time since 2012. But yeah, soccer is a tough sport, I think, for the US because number one, it is so global.
Yeah.
But the draw, I think, for the MLS now is like they're paying, a bunch of not necessarily washed players, but a bunch of older players a ton of money to come play for the clubs here. Like I think, what is it, Messi? I think he's in for a place for Inter Miami. So, that's how I feel about it. But I would say it has become more popular in the US in recent years because of like guys like what's his name? The guy with the freaking ponytail, Zlatan. Remember, like when he came over here, it was kind of like they kind of came in succession, like, and now Messi's here as well. So I feel like it has skyrocketed a little bit.
Yeah. What is his name? Pulisic too, right?
Yeah. So like a bunch of these guys are coming over here, but I think the main problem with the U.S. and soccer is the national team overall is just always complete garbage.
It's just not that great because
They suck.
Yeah, and that's part of it because it's like you don't have necessarily the the American soccer players here, right? Where people are like, oh, I know that guy. He plays for X team, or I know that guy. He plays for that team. So I think that's kind of just the issue there, right? So and again, that's where you're going to have to find ways to get recruit people to play soccer professionally, but it's just a tough draw, right? Because a lot of these guys know, like, hey, if I can grow to be 6'5" or more or whatever, and I'm a good athlete, right, I'm gonna make way more money playing in the NBA. Again, it's a small crop of talent, right, because there's not that many players there, but that's where like I said, maybe you might be able to pry some guys away from football and get them to go into soccer, maybe. But I just feel like, again, it has grown, but I think the growth has been a little bit less, exponential than some of the other ones, right? Because like basketball has grown a ton, obviously, in the last, 30, 40 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, football, that's still the most popular sport. And it's been like that for a while because it used to be baseball.
Yeah, that has fallen
a long
off.
time ago.
Yeah,
and that's
America's
fallen
favorite sport. But like even back to the soccer thing, their structure is very complicated as well. Because to get to because there's so many leagues. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You have the Premier League.
You have the Premier League.
Yeah, like
everything.
MLS. But like all those teams have, it's just like the NBA where they have, subsections of the team. But those teams are based on like age groups. So you have like 16U Barcelona. It's like, all right, bro. Like it's a grind. I think that's another thing is it's way more competitive. To get to that biggest stage. Yeah, it's way more competitive to get to that biggest stage, in soccer, I feel like. So that's kind of also another turnoff. And, another thing, like, you know, if the U.S. is not dominant, then U.S. citizens are probably not going to watch that
Not
sport.
going to care. Yeah,
We don't care, and that's just the truth, you know, and that's American
Right, like,
arrogance, whatever you want to call it.
right. Like everybody, exceptionalism. Like everybody watches track and field because, you know,
We dominate.
The USA is very, very good at it, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, if it's something else, like, I don't know, I mean, table tennis.
Yeah, like water polo.
Water polo.
Yeah.
Cricket.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. You know, they're just not, because cricket's a popular sport, but it's
There.
not here.
Yeah, it really is not.
The upcoming Soccer World Championship will be in the U.S. There will be a lot of tourists from all over the world. There will be a big celebration. Yeah, you know, and that's kind of the interesting part is, like, you know, how many people that don't really follow soccer even know that, you know, so.
I didn't until just now.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So, like, that's kind of the other factor where it's just, you know, there are people that like it, but it's just not as popular here. Like, I guess, you know, there's some people amongst the younger crowds, right, that like it, but it just hasn't grown as much as I think some people thought it could.
Yeah, it's the world sport. At the end of the day, the world is going to favor soccer over everything. And that makes sense. But here in the States, like, it's tough because, like, I feel like a lot of people grew up playing soccer. Like, I grew up playing soccer, but I just fell off the map with it. Like, I just never followed it completely. I gravitated towards basketball and football because that's kind of what we're ingrained with, you know?
And that's most people's, you know, big, you know, like the big three here, I guess, what you got: football, basketball, and, you know, I guess baseball still people like, but
people
you know,
people really like baseball, especially because of the betting and stuff. But, like, I feel like soccer is like fourth, and, like, I don't know, I have a lot of friends that are into soccer, and, like, the amount of team, like, they're all fans of different teams, and I'm like, how on earth, like, and they're all in different leagues, you know?
Right.
But the World Cup always comes around, so I am curious where soccer will be in like 4 years, because I think it's one of the more intriguing sports, and they're also making a crap ton of money. Like, you know, in the the problem that I heard with soccer is the money's becoming an issue. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like now, people with unlimited bank accounts are just sending out money to players to play in probably one of the worst leagues of all time.
Yeah, because, like, you know, you had the stretch, right, where I think it was, what was it, Saudi Arabia, right, where they were trying to offer guys, you know, like huge, you know, sums of money, you know, to come over to play.
Neymar gets paid to talk about the team on Instagram.
Right.
That's a part of his contract. And I think it's like $1 million every time he mentions the team. So that's probably an exaggeration, but that's what I heard.
Yeah. But, you know, at the end of the day, Team USA, you know, for basketball, got it done.
Yeah.
Gold medal and all, right? Which, again, we expected. So, you know, again, I guess to kind of, you know, probably close it off, where do you think this team compares, you know, all time to, well, we're not going to look at every single Team USA basketball team, but, you know, what do you, I guess you got something to say?
No, I was just putting up my one finger for the one.
Right. Yeah. So I was going to, so you think this one is the number one?
This is the best team of all time in the Olympics.
Yeah, I think we both kind of been in the crop of, like, it's the most talented team, you know, of all time. And I feel like we're probably going to be in the minority for that one, because obviously, you know, we know that Team USA had very dominant performances against the rest of the world, right? But, like, you know, our commenter here mentioned, right, in the past, the U.S. basketball team easily defeated the rest of the world. But now these teams have gotten better, right? So you have the combination of some really good players, but they're also playing better teams. And I feel like that kind of means something too, right? Because, you know, obviously, you know, if you go back to, you know, the 1936 USA men's team that won gold, right? Like, they're just not playing the same crop of guys, like, you know, and that has nothing to do with, you know, not picking on those guys, but you know what I mean? It's just like, now, as I ran through it, right? I ran through some of those teams where a team like Canada, almost every guy on that roster is in the NBA, right? Which is the best basketball league in the world, right?
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, even some of these other teams that were not every guy is an NBA player, they at least have, you know, 2, 3 right in their rotation.
Yeah, and that's what I agree with wholeheartedly, and I get it because I've seen the comparisons. Like, I think they're saying that the Dream Team has more personal accolades. Okay, it all depends on what the criteria is. If we're going off of accolades, all right, yeah, Dream Team's got it. Of course they do. But if we're going off of talent, competition, and all that stuff combined, I feel like you can't look at this 2024 Olympic roster and tell me that they're not beating the Dream Team. You know, you look at it from top to bottom. You have Anthony Edwards. Yeah, you have Anthony Edwards coming off the bench. You know, you have Tatum. Like, I'm telling you, like, this team top to bottom, I feel like it just has a little bit more of an edge than the Dream Team. And, you know, maybe that's more of like that sentiment with, you know, we're done with the 90s and stuff like that. But, you know, I always respect, you know, the Dream Team and what they're able to accomplish, you know, being the first team to send over our full pros and things like that. Because before it was all college guys. But, you know, I think this team just has a different feel to it, a different edge, because, you know, you look at other teams that were assembled, strong at the top, a little bit weaker at the bottom. But from top to bottom, this is the Avengers.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, we can look at the Dream Team roster, right? You had, you know, Magic, Barkley, Chris Mullin, John Stockton, right? Karl Malone, Clyde Drexler, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Larry Bird, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Christian Laettner is on there. So, you know, that's a very good team. And like you said, right? Once you get towards the bottom of this roster, yeah, that's where it's not quite the same, right? Because like Derek White, you know, is not, you know, even though he's good, right? He's not in the same, you know, crop, you know, of guys as, you know, the rest of this roster. But, you know, it's a good mix of, you know, great players, you know, of quote unquote yesteryear that are still really good, and some up and comers that, you know, are also very good. So I think that's the tough part. And again, because you got athleticism, you have, you know, size and length, you have shooting, and I think that's the other factor, right? And it's not that the guys on the Dream Team couldn't shoot, but again, you know, good luck trying to slow down Steph Curry, right? You know, from three, you know, with that team. Not that they couldn't necessarily, but, you know, I'm just saying good luck, right? Because again, you got to chase that guy around everywhere, and he's got LeBron, he's got Durant flanking him and everything else. I mean, you know, and you have to guard those guys too. That's all I'm just gonna say. Good luck.
Yeah, and that was my point. Like when we first opened the live stream, like look at LeBron's role and look at everybody else, you know, on the team. LeBron's quarterbacking, playing the point, but teams are going to have to choose between KD, Devin Booker, and Steph Curry. Which one are you leaving open? You know, and these guys, their IQ, they're going to make the right read. Obviously, we saw them have horrible brain farts in this game, but, you know, majority of the time when it counts, they're going to show up and make the right read. Like you saw Durant and Curry pass the ball between each other about 3 or 4 times because they were seeing where's the double going. It's going to Steph. Doesn't matter. I'm shooting over both.
Yep. They can play big. They can play small. They can switch.
Too versatile.
Man. You know, they have guys that can play in the post. They have guys that can play in the pick and roll. They got guys that can pick and pop. I mean, they got guys. I mean, they got guys that can pretty much do just about anything you need them to do.
2 centers that can guard 1 through 5. So I would say it's GG's. I'm not saying it's like, you know, this team destroys them, beats them by 50 or anything like that. But I would take this team over them any day of the week, just because also level of talent that they're playing is insane. You know, they just had to go up against Jokic. Now you're going up against Wemby, other guys as well, and Canada. You know, we already saw that. Yeah, exactly. Yabusele having a freaking legacy moment there, you know, and I just feel like, did the Dream Team ever really go up against anything like that? You know, I don't think so.
Right. So. Yeah, well, I mean, again, is there pretty much anything else, or have we pretty much covered it all?
Bam Adebayo had some great defensive moments in this game. Yeah, for sure. I already talked about it. The commentator had the funniest comment of the night. Wemby tried to post up freaking Bam, and then the commentator was like, and he can't move him. Yeah, you're damn right.
Right, and over the course of this run, you know, he had a lot of great moments, right? Because there were other games, right, where he, you know, had big offensive performances as well. You didn't need it in this game. Right, but there were certainly other games where he was able to take advantage and, you know, be able to do whatever he needed to do. You guys think Tatum should have played more? We talked about it. Like, yeah, you can make the case for it, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, his role just wasn't really a role where you needed him to really score. Like, I mean, you just needed him to do the little things, which he is good at, right? He's a good rebounder. He's a good passer, playmaker. He's a good defender. As you mentioned, right, sometimes they would have him guarding the centers, right? Like they had him, you know, on guys like, you know, Gobert and others, right? So, I mean, you know, that's kind of the good thing about having guys like that where, you know, when you need them, you can put them out there, but you don't necessarily have to rely on them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think he should have played a little bit more during the should have played some minutes during the Serbian games. But in terms of like his minute discrepancy, no, I don't have a problem. As long as he's out there and he's getting the rebounds and, you know, making the right swing as well. That's fine, because I think that's number one. That's the part of the reason why they won the NBA championship, the Celtics, that is. And number two, that's what he's the best at, if you want me to be honest. So on this roster, I didn't have a problem with, like,
Right.
the minutes that he got, but would I have wanted to see him get more PT in the games where he DNP'd? Absolutely. I think he deserved to be on the floor.
Yeah, and that speaks to the versatility of a lot of these players. It's just the fact that, like, not all these guys have to, are guys that are mainly relying on, if I'm not scoring, I'm not having a good game. Like, a lot of these guys can do, a lot of the other things, and it's a lot easier to do it when everybody can do it, as opposed to, like we've talked about, right? Like, say like a Bam or an AD, where they're not being, flanked by, other bigs that can kind of help switch out and guard, other guys or protect the rim or whatever. Or, in the case of LeBron, you have other high-level offensive players that you can play alongside, compared to guys that are a little bit, more middle of the pack, and things like that. So that's the great part about, these guys figuring it out. Because, again, you don't have a lot of time to play together and figure it out, but they figured it out. And, in the moments they figured it out and it was, and they were at their peak, they looked great.
Yeah. What a magical run. Now back to reality.
Yeah. Because now, now we're in the dark days where, no more basketball, I guess, essentially for a little while, other than, I guess, what is it? Big three.
Yeah.
I guess you have the women's team as
they'll be playing tomorrow for gold, I believe, in the morning.
Yeah. Exactly. So, 3v3, don't want to mention too much about that because that was not great. Not the 3v3. I have a problem with it being in there. Just we didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
There.
And you know what's interesting? I didn't know this, but all of their qualifying games are during the NBA season, which is why we can't send over NBA players, because they'd have to take time. Like, because people were like, I think it was Draymond. He was like, Nas Reed should be out there. He'd be killing them. I'm like, yeah, he should be. But then people were like, you can't go out there because the qualifying games are mid-season for the NBA. Right. So that's why we send over the people that we do. And that takes away people from the G League. That takes away people in the league as well. So you're kind of only stuck with what? Like, retired players or old heads,
Yeah, or guys that are just kind of
sitting around.
Free agency pool. Yeah, guys that I guess are kind of in the free agency pool.
Man, get John Wall out there, bro.
Right, yeah, and I guess, like, if that's the case, like, why is Jimmer Fredette the only guy I recognize? Like, I don't think I recognize any of the other dudes out there.
Yeah, great question. And for the women, since the scheduling lines up, they can play those qualifying games.
Yeah, and we still got bronze, I think.
Yeah, we got bronze. What was it?
Men's got nothing. Women's got bronze.
Yeah, women's they got bronze. I think it was Van Lith. Who's the other? Which one is the other?
Ryan Howard and I think De'Erica Hamby, right?
Okay,
and like they're all stars, basically.
Yeah, they're really good.
So like they're not just nobodies. Like they're actually really good players.
Right.
And that's a good scoop because that part I didn't really know.
Yeah.
It's just like
I've always wondered why didn't we send our elite guys or somebody over there? And then I was like, it doesn't line up scheduling wise.
Yeah, and it's just like I said, my only question is if that's the case, like what about the guys that are just kind of just sitting in free agency that I don't necessarily think are probably going to get signed to a team? I know obviously like they're kind of in a point where like maybe there's a chance that they get their names called, but I don't know. Maybe that's just kind of like something that just isn't really in the cards. But
that's another good point.
That would kind of be nice to see. Yeah,
I feel like the 3v3 men's team needs a total revamp. And, it's not like, that's the biggest stage in the world by all means. But in 3-on-3 in a game like that, I feel like we should be dominating considering.
Which stage is the bigger 3v3 stage in the world? Is it that one or is it the big three?
I mean, at this point, I feel like I see more big three promotion than I do Olympic 3-on-3.
Right. And I think there's a women's 3v3 league, right, that's coming out right pretty soon as well, I think, too. And I think,
I didn't know that.
You got some WNBA players that have put it together.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's going to be coming out, I think, pretty soon. I'm not sure if it's this year or next, but I know it's coming.
Okay. That's what's up. Well, I think we covered all the bases. We talked about a lot today. We obviously talked about we talked about, we talked about the Olympics, Team USA winning gold, which everybody knew that they would. We even talked about Denver a little bit, gave a sneak peek of our thoughts on that. We talked about, soccer even. So, very versatile stream. So shout out to Miami Heat Network. Shout out to Keith Wells. I can't pronounce your username. I'm so sorry, but shout out to you. You were very informative and all that stuff. You know, asking great questions, you know, facilitating really the majority and beef of this live stream. And thank you, Miami Heat Zone, as well, for your comments as well. So we will see you guys on the next live stream, which might not be for a while, unfortunately, because we got to figure out what on earth we would live stream about.
Right.
But, you know, in the meantime, we will be breaking down every single NBA team's off season, giving them a grade, breaking it down for you guys if you missed anything. So we might be covering your favorite team. So before we do head out of here, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys on the next live